Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the panel discussion. Content marketing challenges and opportunities, a publisher's perspective. I'm going to invite forward the moderator of this session, Abhimanyu Radhakrishnan, who is a journalist, he's a blogger, he's a TV show host, he's an entrepreneur, what's left. He is the co-founder of i420 Digital Media and founding editor of Tech2.com, India's leading technology portal. He's produced and hosted the show Tech2.com on CNBC Television 18 and CNN IBM, and has helped set up Times Group's businesses channel called ET Now. I'd like to welcome him forward while we set up the stage for our esteemed panelists to join us here forward.
Set up stage. In the meanwhile, I'll quickly introduce the panelists so that we can get cracking the moment they're mic'd up. First member of the panel is Adam Singolda. Adam is the founder and CEO of Taboola, who's also one of the sponsors of CMS Asia. Thanks for that. Taboola is the largest content recommendation and monetization network, serving over 300 million unique users every month. Adam, of course, his first job was in the Israeli Defense Forces, where he was part of the computer science and cryptography team, which is why when I heard that, I told him that the pointers that I'm going to send all the panelists on the mail, I'm not even going to bother sending it to you. I'll just leave it in my drafts and you'll figure out how to read it on your own. Yeah, Adam? Of course, after the Israeli army stint, he became an entrepreneur and set up Taboola, and he's also on Israel's top 30 under 30 business managers list compiled by The Marker. He authors a column for Media Post on the video industry and is a regular speaker for a number of properties such as Streaming Media, New TV, Elevate, Meetup, Bloomberg West, and many others. This is Adam's first time in India, so welcome, and it's lovely to have you on the panel. Next, I'd like to call up Mr. Vinit Thakkar, who's the VP Digital at Universal Music, and he's responsible for the overall digital new business development and licensing strategy and implementation for India and the SAARC region. His responsibilities include both content acquisition, aggregation, and distribution across all mobile and internet platforms. He also works closely with brand partners and provides them music-led solutions, which makes their music an integral part of the brand's overall strategy to communicate and engage with consumers. Thanks, Vinit. We've got Mr. Vinod Verma, who's the editor of Digital and Convergence at Amar Ujala. His roles and responsibilities include managing content on the Amar Ujala website and planning for its growth. He also works with the newspaper team for integration with print and digital resources. He's been at the BBC London, where he created a template for the Hindi online property and was the first language producer to work on the Lead website from outside Bush House. Thanks for joining us. We've got Sanjay, Sindhwani, who is the head of the Economic Times.com business at Times Internet Limited. Sanjay has been a former colleague. He's worked almost all his career after moving from print to digital at the Times Group, except for a short stint in the middle at Money Control at Network 18. He's responsible for all the digital activities of the Economic Times brand across mobile, web. And has written a book called Kitne Aadmi The, which, as he puts it, is completely useless Bollywood trivia. He'll be updating us on the latest at HT Media. Thanks for joining us, Dipto. We're going to try to keep this short by having some initial opening comments from all our panelists, and then I'll probably put some pointed questions related to their specific industries and some insight that they can give us. And probably if we have time, RP, we can throw it open to the floor as well for some questions.
Well, we're all set. Over to you, Mr. Moderator.
Sorry, we know that the coffee break was cancelled and we're the only thing standing between you and lunch, so do bear with us for a little longer. And speaking of lunch, while many agencies and other partners are going to be sharing lunch with us later. Are we a little worried, publishers here, that they might be eating our lunch quite literally? Sanjay, thoughts for you. Is this a threat for traditional content creators and publishers, given that if everybody is a content creator, hey, what role does the publisher play in the new ecosystem, or how can he leverage the same power he had in traditional forms of media? Sanjay, is it a threat to start with? Can you hear him at the back? Yeah. It's on.
So, I don't think really that this production of content in marketing domain is only the only thing is that it takes competition more intense, and what we see is, what we see as publishers is people are looking at interesting content. They're looking at entertainment. They're different forms of content, and whoever is able to produce that kind of content will get the eyeballs. So as publishers, we are in the business of aggregating eyeballs in a large business. So if you're starting a business or you're a new business, for you to start from scratch is going to be the challenge. And today, as a publisher, while at one end I may start looking at allowing advertisers to use my platform as a marketing platform for through content. At the other hand, as a publisher, I am also using other platforms for my content marketing. So when I go to Facebook or YouTube or even search, it's my content that I'm marketing on these channels. So it's a win-win for both ways. So I am going out and marketing my content on some of the new technologies and platforms which have come about, and at the same time, I'm creating opportunities on my platform for others to use, and kind of reach out to the audiences that they're looking at.
I'm going to come back to this issue a little later in detail, but just very quickly, since you're from the Times Group, I've worked with them as well. When you see a summit titled Content Marketing Summit, there's a little bit of deja vu here, because many years ago when the Times Group came out with the MediaNet property, there was criticism left, right, and center. But you could argue that the Times was ahead of the curve with content marketing in a different way, right, from almost a decade ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the issue is you have to be transparent about it. You let the consumer know what is paid for and what is not paid for. I think as long as you're able to draw that distinct line and the consumer is aware, I think that's what is important.
Right. I'm going to go to the other former journalist on the panel just to get that perspective. Or actually, still journalist, you are also wearing the business cap at Amar Ujala. Slightly tricky when you say content marketing in a news perspective, because that's one area of content where people don't want to be sold something and want unbiased content, so to say. So what's the fine line that you have to travel over there?
Clearly, I'm a journalist. I'm editor of the website, and I'm looking after the portal. And clearly, I'm odd man out here, because I don't understand that that vocabulary is very prevalent here. So I've heard many experts here, and my impression is we are not talking about 900 million people. We are talking about 8% of the population who can read, write, and understand English, and we are not talking about 900 million people who are reading vernacular languages. Like Hindi itself is 500 million property, and we are not talking about it. So when it comes to me after I left BBC and joined Amar Ujala, and the task was given to me to for content marketing also. Now it is just a couple of months back I got this opportunity, and I'm trying to understand it. But to me, because I thought I'm expert of content generating, because for last 25 years I have been generating content and editing stuff. But to me, selling it to the people who really matters is a really challenging job, because if 500 odd million people are there who can consume your content, and the internet penetration and the technology and other things are challenging. So it's a challenging job for me. It's a challenging job for all marketing related people. How to reach out to them.
Right. Let's get a perspective from outside traditional publishing from the music industry. You're working with brands as well, Vinit. How do you balance that? The fact that brands could go directly and make their own music, or work directly with artists, or go through a large label like yourself. What is the USP of the publisher in today's age when everyone is a publisher?
In fact, it's been a big opportunity. Like at Universal Worldwide, we have this whole division which is called the New Business Development, where we work very closely with brands. The philosophy that we follow is that we do not just deliver content, but we deliver content plus. So which is we deliver experience which is over and above the content. So in a lot of instances where we work very closely with brands, we are not just offering merely a product or a service to the end consumer of the brand, but we are also fulfilling certain experiences. And when I say certain experiences, in our world, we call them as money can't buy experiences. So, every quarter, probably some of the selected consumers of brand are sent internationally to see concerts of international artists, a backstage meet and greet with an international artist. Now, this is something which brand cannot deliver itself on its own. So we try and marry both the content and the experience together and kind of bring it forward to the consumer, because that is fulfilling both for the consumer as well as for the brand, because a lot of this feeds back into the social media of the brand. And it creates not only a lot of engagement, but also creates a lot of customer retention at the back of it.
Right, thanks. Deepto, your perspective as a publisher, everybody here seems to think that content marketing is definitely an opportunity, but it has to be slightly threatening as well for publishers who've traditionally been the gatekeepers. So given that you're from the digital arm of an old print publishing legendary brand in India, I would say, what's the perspective, not just on the digital side, but in the larger group?
Yeah, I think what happens is that over the years, the threshold of entering into generating content has become easier. So for example, for a brand for whom it was impossible to create content, let's say 5 years back, now as we were hearing that by creating a Facebook page, it is very easy to create content. But at the same time, the traditional media houses like, let's say, HT Media or the Times Group, we have an advantage because we have been doing this for a much longer time. So, as somebody said, that people are not here to read about shampoo, people are here to read about hair problems. So, if we manage to, and I would believe that traditional media houses have a better understanding of what the audience wants to read. So we are still able to, we do not control the gate, but I think we have an advantage over the gate because we can generate that content which makes real sense for the, so it's not about saying that, hey, buy soap, but say that, look, you need to learn these things about hygiene.
Right. Adam, you're a neutral perspective or a neutral party as far as this debate between advertisers or agencies and publishers in this new content marketing era is concerned. You work with both. Any insights from global markets which have been doing this a little longer than we have, as to, do you see a difference in the way publishers or traditional publishers approach their content marketing versus either new brands trying to build their own content properties, or even agencies directly building content, how they approach the whole game?
Yeah, and I think, first of all, I think it's very exciting times, I think specifically even for the Indian market, because we're already seeing, from our perspective, tremendous results and performance that we're seeing in other areas around the world. And I think that hasn't happened beforehand with other advertising products. So I think, for all of us here, this is a very exciting moment. And I think we're going to look back, remember that transition point in time when we transitioned from display and regular traditional IAB units to what we're talking about here today. So I agree with the fellow colleagues here. I think it starts with, what do you think a publisher will be in 5 years from now versus what a publisher was 5 years back? And I think, we come from a world where the main KPI for a publisher was time on site. Our dream was that people would come to our site and never leave. And I'm not sure that's the future anymore. I think publishers are becoming curators for the web. They're becoming knowledgeable as to where people should go. And we want people to come back again and again and again because they're getting a good experience here. So I think the notion of linking to other publishers and content around the web, if even reducing time on site, is not necessarily a bad thing, because if the user is having a good experience, they actually may come back. So I think one is that the future of publisher, the definition of publisher is changing. Two, I think the fact that publishers are now creating content and are putting a lot of money into it and they're taking it as seriously as they can is good. Because I think that monetization coming with that can help our publisher business to grow. Because that generates native advertising platforms. So now MX sponsored content may be on a publisher's site, which gives the publisher an opportunity to generate even more revenue, curating the content that makes sense for their editorial voice. So I think it's great because I think it creates an ecosystem where publishers can actually make incremental revenue that we need. And I think also the purpose of what is a publisher is changing. So we're seeing this left and right in other markets, and I think it's for the most part exciting.
Okay. I'm just going to put you on the spot for a piece of data so that we all go away with one thing, at least if you remember. Most clicked article on your network last year.
So that's a good one. So we're now serving 3.5 billion recommendations every day to about 100 million people a day, which is about 300 million a month. So in the US, unless you were just born or you're very old, you probably see us at least once a month. And that's unique because then we came up with this report called What America is Clicking On, which is unique because now we can see what people are actually clicking on. So in last year, in Q4, the number one piece of content that was clicked and consumed was, it was a slideshow of the 5 wealthiest women in the world.
The 5 wealthiest women in the world.
So that was number one. Number 2 had Kim Kardashian in it.
Big surprise there.
So those were the 2, and it changes all the time. And in December, the top articles that were consumed, at least on our network, every 15 article had the word Cyrus Smiles in it. So I think it shows some trend in terms of what people are clicking on, but that obviously changes based on what's going on.
Miley Cyrus and Kim Kardashian, not hard to understand why, but Sanjay, you're taking notes because the 5 richest women in the US was the number 1 article, so maybe we see the India version of that uploaded
Unfortunately,
tomorrow.
yeah, it fits in my brand.
Yeah. So we talked about the threat being that potentially publishers could get bypassed and people could create their content on their own. The opportunity, of course, being that you could work slightly closely with brands and get out of the whole CPC, CPM, metric-driven game by building what we call solutions today. Are you seeing some sort of traction in that area as well as the publisher?
So I think 2 things there. At ET, we have consciously stayed away from the CPC, CPL kind of a game, right from the start. So I think that decision was taken a long time back that we are not going to go into that kind of a performance-based advertising solutioning. So we were never there. So we've been around display, and content solutioning is something that we are working on. It's a tricky area as publishers and editors, and what we've been seeing is that rather than figuring out or letting the advertisers decide what we should be doing for them, it's better if we decide where the interest of the consumers is and also the advertisers. So there are new areas in technology, for instance. So if we go deep in those areas and start creating information, then there's a fitment for the advertiser that happens on its own. So rather than letting somebody from the outside drive the agenda, I would rather have my editorial team figure out what's going to work in the market and then create content around it. And if it's credible, it's good, it's informative, I'll get the eyeballs. And if I'm getting the eyeballs, the advertiser comes. So I think that route probably works better for me as a publisher than allowing an advertiser to come in and say, I want to create this content. Not that we don't do it, but then we create it as a separate microsite, very distinct from our key property, so that the distinction is understood by our consumers that yes, this is sponsored content, this is not sponsored content. And that allows us to maintain the fine line between the editorial and the marketing or the sales side of the business.
And are you seeing some traction now from brands in this area, because it's sort of virgin territory for them as well?
Yeah, I think there is interest, and we are experimenting. We are experimenting small. We're also trying to figure out, we don't want to get into an Atlantic-like situation where we mess up with our consumers. So we're going slow, and there is traction in the market. Even the advertisers today kind of in that experimentation mode. So yes, we are doing it.
Vinod, do you see a problem in the skill sets as far as people who traditionally create content as publishers doing this sort of branded content? More importantly, to your readers, does it matter if it is branded content as long as it's interesting or useful? Do you see a potential of backlash from readers, especially in regional languages who come and visit your website, if they feel that the content is branded or has been tied up with an advertiser, even if it's not an obvious ad, but if it's it's high quality utility content, do you feel that readers might rebel if they felt it was paid for?
See, if you talk about Hindi, as a vernacular language, it has not reached to the level where paid content can be created or your sponsored content can be created. We have not reached to that level because the eyeballs we are catching up is not as high as PG or Times of India or IHT is getting. But we are very conscious that way. If I can talk about my organization, we are very cautious about the editorial control and everything. But challenges, as you asked, is very great. Like just a decade ago, we were struggling with the font. There were 24 companies creating 3 dozen different fonts, and 4 dozen different systems were there to use those fonts. And before you open up a website, you have to download the font. Then the challenge now, even today, you cannot try Hindi because keyboards are not supporting. So mobile consumers are growing. Then it has outgrown the desktop numbers. But the problem with mobile is you cannot interact. So and in digital era, when interactivity is the key word, you cannot interact because the technology is not supporting it. So there comes the challenge of marketing also. When you cannot interact in an interactive medium, how can you connect with your readers? So user-generated content is nil because they cannot interact. You can ask them to upload your photo and write a couple of sentences as caption and other things, but you cannot expect them to share their content in written form.
I guess in regional markets, literacy is also an issue and the fonts issue, but that doesn't
Digital
exist in
literacy.
something.
Digital literacy.
It doesn't exist in an area like music, for example. There I'm sure you see a lot of traction even in regional markets. There do you see any potential of a pushback from consumer if he feels the content is overtly branded? Because you saw the Fevicol video that we saw, the song was a great hit. So it doesn't, on the face of it, it doesn't seem like the consumer really cares as long as the content is high quality. Would you agree?
Completely agree with you. In fact, the challenge that we face, and we are closely working with brands and stuff like that, is to continuously keep pushing them back, saying that the brand and the message of the brand needs to be integrated into whatever the offering is to the end consumer, rather than making it very explicit or in your face or trying to sell the 3 USPs about the brand. When something like that happens, and I think we saw umpteen number of examples today, there is a consumer backlash. The consumer doesn't really appreciate it because constantly you are trying to sell to the consumer. I think the biggest challenge in content marketing is it's actually an art of selling without selling. And I think that's, when brands get that, it's very easy to kind of marry music with the brand message and send it out to the consumer.
Right. It's an interesting point, Dipto, because you also have to market your own products. So in one way, you're also wearing your marketing hat apart from being a publisher. You have effectively free media from your existing products like radio and print distributed in. But there's this challenge of selling without actually selling. I'd like you to specifically talk about your HR product called Shine, because you do a lot of activities around it. So how do you get that balance?
Okay, I think before we get to any selling part, I think the first thing we must all keep reminding ourselves that the content cannot be boring. Because the moment boredom sets in, you don't have readers, users, and therefore you have nobody to sell to. And if you become too overtly marketing, if it's an ad, it's the same thing of switching off when the ad break comes on a TV. So people will move away. So when I do an HR conclave, and if I start talking about my products too much, people will just want to go out for a smoke. So I think that's the first piece, that I must remember that what is he here for? Is he here to learn? Is he here to get entertained? Is he here to listen to music, read news, what? Now, if I first think that has to be given to him as efficiently and nicely as possible. And within that, if I can create context, so saying that, hey, you are here to learn about, let's say, for example, social solutions in hiring, there is something happening in that. And what we realized is that if we manage to give that information to him that the world is moving to an X direction and there is Y product which is becoming hugely popular, not talking about yourself, we find that a very large number of sort of post-event or post-experience inquiries come up that, can you tell me a little bit about this? Which I think is what is about selling without selling, that you say, you present the context, you say that this is important. Yeah, and then people kind of say that if you are, what is the authority with which you are saying this is so important? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
It's interesting, this whole trend of what is being called native advertising on the internet, where your content looks very similar to what is natively produced by the publisher. It's not as big a problem in the internet as it is in print. The same thing you do in print, and people hounding you saying, hey, that's an ad, why are you putting it in the same font in your newspaper? But in online, for some reason, it's acceptable because consumers seem to be saying that we don't mind this content even if it's native advertising, as long as people said it's done well. So what's been the experience with native advertising in the last 1 or 2 years in advanced markets?
Yes, I think in sponsored, much like not in sponsored, there's God is in the details. So you can create content that's not sponsored, which is great, and you create content that's not sponsored, which is not great. And same goes for sponsored. I mean, we've seen here before, Red Bull is sending people to the moon to produce engaging content. American Express and Digitas is launching multi-million-dollar publisher called Open Forum that's only providing information to consumers, small businesses in America, about how to manage their workflows as a small business. So yes, it's sponsored, but I think it's great content, and it's actually even working for both of those companies. And then I can give you examples when it's not working. And I think we can ask our publishers here, but they probably see the same with content they create that's not sponsored. So I think we're seeing the same thing. If the content is good and it has good creative.
A quick example of how it doesn't work, just because we've seen lots of examples of when it works.
So not working well is when there is some sort of distraction or a gap between the creative to the actual content. So we've seen, for instance, that advertisers started to try to take advantage, or at least try different creative to drive clicks to their pages, but then the performance was low. And so that's our biggest concern in the space. We want to shy away from what happened in display advertising when people paid money and over time stopped paying money because it didn't work. And then the biggest company that end up failing is publishers, because they see revenue, then it goes away. And that's what happens with display. So I think what we did, and I think that's part of our responsibility, is to give consumers an ability to participate in a conversation and tell you when something was poorly executed. So if you work with us, for instance, there is an X on every recommendation, so that if you clicked on a paid content and it wasn't what you thought it is, or you've seen it before, or it's just boring, tell us. The editor of that publisher will know. So if it's on Rediff, the editor of Rediff will know that someone just clicked on an article that was not cool. And then they'll think about, why wasn't that good? So again, I don't think we have the scale, or anyone here has the scale to curate the entire planet. But if you give 1 billion people an ability to tell you what they think, then I think it, over time, will curate. Good will go up and bad will go down.
I can already hear the cutlery clinking outside, so we're going to wind up this panel very quickly. But if any questions from the audience, we can take some for our panelists. Anybody has a question for any of our panelists?
We did a great job.
Yeah, I think we've answered all the questions, or maybe we're just very, very hungry. So I'm going to wrap up on that note, because we've got one more panel on the other side of lunch, if you don't want to get delayed. Thank you so much for joining us on this panel, and feel free to network with any of our panelists during lunch break. Very quickly, request the conference chair, RP, to give a memento to each of our panelists, such as Sindhwani from
A big thank you to our moderator and our panelists for participating. And Mr. Singh, the moderator himself, please. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Singh, for doing the honors. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to go at our Twitter hashtag CMS Asia 2014. George Bernard Shaw once said that there is no love greater than the love of food. which simply means that we are going to break for lunch. Some hot, yummy lunch is waiting for all of you outside. Please do join us for lunch, and we will try and have you all back here in your seats in half an hour if possible, please. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch. And welcome back to the post-lunch session. Hope you all had a good lunch. Yes? No sleeping, okay. All right, here we are with our panel discussion number 2. Traditionally, ad agencies depended on big ideas, high decibel campaigns, and mass media. All that was fine because the environment was TRP based, the audiences were passive. But now, things have changed. With the rise of the interactive media, the advent of the zero moment of truth, the shift in power equation because of social media, a common refrain is being heard in boardrooms across the country. They just don't get it. Well, can the ad agencies reinvent themselves? Let's find out. Let's talk. I hand it over to our moderator, Mr. Abhimanyu Radhakrishnan, who I did introduce to you all earlier. Abhimanyu, it's over to you now.
Thanks. Thank you so much. This is our post-lunch session, so we're going to try and make it exciting so that we don't have anybody dozing off after a healthy meal. And RP was very categorical in saying that he wants this session to be full of tough questions because he's been an agency man himself, so wants to give his former colleagues a hard time. I'll very quickly introduce my panelists because we're short on time, so I can't read out their larger profiles. But we have Peter York. Peter is CEO and co-founder at York Communications. Sorry, let me actually start with my extreme left where Gautam is sitting. Gautam Ediratta, of course, is the GM for mobility and digital at Omnicom. We've got Peter, who's, as I said, co-founder at York Communications. We've got Anthony Rajkumar, who's VP Strategy at Global Team Ford, which is a WPP agency specifically for Ford. We've got Sanjeev Sharma, who's CEO and Executive Chairman at Optimistics. And we've got Tim Gilua, did I get that right, who's CEO at the Lynx India. Recently, they just acquired a Kochi-based company, which is very interesting. I was talking to Tim about that earlier. But let me quickly get some perspective from Sanjeev. It seems like the entire session pre-lunch, or a large part of the session pre-lunch, was actually about people taking it out on traditional ad agencies by saying things like, stop thinking campaign, don't use the word ad. It's pretty disruptive for the agency business. Would you agree?
I think I'd just like to start by saying that by pointing a finger in their direction, it's like saying we know, but the whole concept is that this space is really evolving, so I'm not sure whether all of us have the right answers or not. But I think, truly what is happening is there's a change. And even if you look at the way the agencies were structured, I worked in Ogilvy years ago, and we had one guy with all the solutions, whether it was media, whether it was creative or PR, you just took everything to the client. And the client had one partner to listen to. All I think is life has become very difficult for a marketing head when he's got 10 different guys doing 10 different jobs for the agency, and at some level they might be at cross purposes. So we're seeing examples now, like in Anthony's case, you've got JWT, Mindshare, and Wonderman coming together. So again, somebody providing an integrated service. So I truly think going forward, it's going to be about collaboration. Now, the big question is who's going to lead that collaboration? And if content is going to be what brands are going to use to engage with their consumers, then is the advertising agency going to make the shift into storytelling, or they're still going to stay with the 30-second commercial?
Right.
I think that's the question we need to ask ourselves.
Anthony would like to take that because there seems to be this mentality that advertising is about talking about yourself in a very short burst, usually interruptive, whereas content marketing seems to be almost the reverse of that. So would you agree with that to a large extent?
Yeah, the answer would be yes and no in that sense, because yeah, it is very true that some people had pointed fingers, and for the right reasons as well, but not entirely. We cannot say that everything they said was right in that sense. Because one of the fundamental issues that we are facing today was something which happened many years ago, which is what even Sanjay pointed out in terms of the unbundling which we did from the agency perspective, where we let go of all of these things. So some crucial skill sets which are required is now kind of sitting outside of the agency structure. Now, having said that, the agencies have also for many years, I mean, evolution has not really touched the agency business for too many years now. And for many years, it's been sitting in a space where there's a traditional way of doing things, or there's a brief, and then there's an output, which typically is a creative product, a 30-seconder or a radio spot, and then boom comes something else. And also the difference is when this has always been a dissemination kind of a mode. I tell you what I want to tell you, and it's a bullet theory of communication. But today that's kind of changed because the consumers want to talk back to you. And it's a very strange place to be in, and agencies are still struggling to figure out how to be engaging in that kind of an environment. So
let me take that further with a recent example. Gautam, Rahul Gandhi gives a speech at CII. A day later, a 16 or 17-year-old kid has auto-tuned that and made that a huge viral hit on the internet. Where's the time for a brief in this sort of environment?
Okay, I mean, I believe some agencies, have evolved, or at least making concerted changes in terms of adding specialists. I think the generalist structure of the agency of the past continues to hold, and the number of specialists that they're adding, that is sort of multiplying. So if you look at some of the new ones, so of course social is the newest large one. There's programmatic, which is sitting right behind it. In the past there's been mobile and social and search. And I think that this is an evolution, and it'll continue happening. There isn't time for a brief, to come back to your question, but I think the right brands will find people who can tell new stories and fresh stories every day, and make this part of a dialogue rather than a 6 months or a broadcast.
Tim, some international perspective to that. Your firm has been around, as you said, for 30 years, so you've seen this evolution.
Yes.
Are you adapting fast enough?
Yes, I think the model we have in France is quite interesting because first we look at the consumer, and right now the consumer is very demanding. He has changed his mindset because of invasion of digital, because of the economic crisis, and now he's expecting every brand to be useful to him. He doesn't have the time to see unexpected advertising. So if he wants this experience, he wants a global and fluid experience across all media. So it's not about what media you should select, etc., and what message. First, we should understand what kind of customer we are talking about. That's why we have completely changed the organization of a kind of traditional agency. And we have the objective is to propose to the customer, to the consumer, a fluid experience, and we don't care if we are going to use digital, below the line, marketing services, PR, etc. In France, we have already a call center, we have a teaching company, we have a research company, and all of this entity sit in the same roof to be able to find what is the leverage, what is scalable with what point of contact, basically. So it's quite different from like advertising agency.
Peter, yours is probably the smallest agency in terms of maybe the youngest as well on this panel. But even recent agencies or even newer agencies, if they started out as digital and social, the thinking seems to be that content is a totally different ball game, and they may not have the mindset for it. Would you agree?
I think so. But I think fundamentally, if you just go down to the basics, it's all about good storytelling. And if people have that capability of telling the story, and not only just telling it, but telling it in a way that it becomes viral, that other people can pick it up and then carry the story forward. So it's as if it's handing over the baton. I think if that is achieved, I think then, there's no barrier to that. And it can be in a large agency, it can be in a small agency format. But I think that is what the customer wants at the end of the day, or that is what we should be serving the customer to achieve.
Right. You mentioned storytelling formats. We were discussing, many of you have seen the RSA animate videos where you have an animator on a whiteboard literally drawing out a story. I recently saw a great story on the BBC's website where they explained quantitative easing using that animation format. Now, you could argue that the skill set to do that kind of animation probably exists in an agency which has great illustrators, great draftsmen, but would that mindset of storytelling in that long form, be something that an agency could develop?
I don't think it's, whether it's animation or whether you've got good art directors is going to be the difference. My company, we do television shows, so, for about 8 hours a week, your job is to engage the viewer. And, that's what your rating system is. It's a combination of number of people into time spent. So unless you're telling engaging stories, so I think the first thing has got to be about, I don't have any motive other than tell a story. So I think that, if that can be the starting point, then we'll worry about how to integrate the brand and are you relevant to the brand. And so it's, I think the most important thing is, can you put the consumer first? He's a guy who's tuning into your story. Do you have a story to tell him? And then you can decide, whether you want to stand on one leg and tell it, or do you want to hang upside down, or do you want to animate it? Those, they're all functional stuff. I think, the other real thing that all of us have to worry about is, for years we've heard the story of content is king and publishing is emperor. And what's YouTube done? They've, taken publishing at zero cost and given it to everybody. So I think that's where the fundamental change is happening at that level. All of us sitting in this room, some of them sitting on this side, us guys sitting here, we're all going to have to watch the new breed of content creators. Our job will be to really work with them, assist them, and make I can't say make them relevant to us, make ourselves relevant to them. So that's the real story that is happening, and how it unfolds is for all of us to watch. But it's always going to be about, am I relevant to a certain set of people? And can I create sustained engagement with them? So, that's what that's the community business that we keep talking about. That's people following a guy who's talking into camera, and they say, yes, I will allow you to, send me an email to say you put up something new. Now that's really the content creator of today.
So the holy grail clearly is this opt-in kind of engagement. But it's a chicken and egg, because to get to that level of reputation, you need time. And as we were discussing, any clients out there who are willing to give you a couple of years to build the next Top Gear?
No, that's a challenge, because I think it takes two hands to clap. It is easier to say that, agencies got to get this right. Of course, they got to get it right. There are many things that they got to still get it right. But on the other hand, this entire thing of now, I want the results now, I want it in this quarter, is going to put tremendous pressure on what the beauty of this medium can achieve. Yes, we're going to get there. But the fact of the matter is, this cannot be something that I need to do something now and I need results that's coming in tomorrow. And where is the patience for long form? Where is the patience for longer term in that sense? So that, I guess, a few clients get it. So therefore, the agencies which work with them do a lot better. But on the other hand, I think it's again an evolution process where it will take time for people to really understand the potential of this and grasp it.
Right. But Gautam, a client's response would be that, hey, you are the guys who a decade back came to me and said that internet is the medium of real time. You have your AdWords panel, you bid real time, you can see exactly who's clicking through. It was always sold as the medium of ROI, immediate result, short term.
So there's two parts, right? There's the long-term communication planks that you got to build, and there's a real-time conversation you've got to have. You've got to track all your metrics real time. But I think that there's, in the case of some brands, or some types of messaging, it takes a few quarters to sort of build and register. Especially a lot of the brands that are in the more subliminal space, FMCG, etc. Right now, I think we need to balance both. We can't get lost in data. Like I'm not sure if you've seen this ad for Adobe, where you have this kid clicking on this buy now button and it's triggering the entire supply chain. Right, downstream. So you can't get hijacked by a few data points. I think you've got to maintain the longer term perspective. Especially from a comms platform perspective, and then continue tweak. So love real time data, but we love longer term thinking as well.
And
so.
Are your clients buying that pitch? Do we understand that?
They are, yeah. We were speaking about one of that before this.
In fact, when we were speaking about it, Peter mentioned interestingly that you said that subliminal brands kind of look for metrics very early on, but B2B brands aiming for thought leadership, you think there would be slightly low-hanging fruit to initially try content marketing as their primary tool?
See, the point is you can't do one or the other. I think you do one and the other. So the point is, while you may run a thought leadership channel on one side, you've also got to get some early results using other kind of tools. So I think it's a mix of both, and it's a judicious mix of both that will actually give satisfaction ultimately. I think that's what the customer would look at. Right. So it's not one versus the other.
Right.
I also guess that it's a question of, you got to measure the traction. Something is going on. You may not get the results immediately, but you at least know which direction it is going, so which is extremely important. And also this medium allows you the ability to keep inventing and keep changing and keep getting better seamlessly. So that's where I guess this traction is a very important term to rather use than to say, I need results now. But then you cannot do anything without results because it's about ROI at the end of the day. We're talking business.
Tim, how do you balance that? Especially, at tomorrow's workshop, I know there's a lot of interest from people in terms of how to get a real metric for something like content marketing, because on one hand you're saying, look at it long term, don't do an ad, try and engage him subliminally, but on the other hand, this is a digital medium where people want metrics. We're just talking about ROI. Where have you found the balance or attempted to find the balance?
Well, I think ROI is a very buzzy name, but it's very difficult because, we are in the area of big data, and if you have too much KPI, you can be lost in your KPI. So the first thing, and I am fighting for that every day, is for what is the value for my client. And the objective is that the brand is providing value for their client. That's my bottom line. And then what KPI can we do? We speak a lot about engagement on social media, etc. Okay, who cares to have one like on Facebook if this guy will not buy your product? Some other can, what is engagement? I'm engaged right now in a conversation, but am I going then to say goodwill about this event? Of course, yes, because I like it, but you're not sure about what I'm going to say. So regarding the KPI, I would say it really depends on the brand itself, and it depends on the industry. And what I would say is that one of the most important is to be able to create a databases and to talk to your client and to be able to segment your client accordingly and then to monitor regularly. But I don't really like the word engagement and all of these things because it's like a marketing jargon, but what is the final story? What matters is to sell more products. Let's be clear.
At this stage, I'm just going to ask the audience any questions to some of our panelists. We didn't have any questions in the previous session, so in case anybody has some questions, I can see one hand there. Please do introduce yourselves and let us know the question, and if it's specifically for any one panelist.
Actually, it's to the entire panelist. I'm Nilakshi. I work with Anthony, actually. My question is, since you're the right kind of people, and this question has been bothering me for some time. I work as a traditional planner. I have the honor of working with digital analysts and a lot of other people, media planners. The takeout from the conversation is we are trying to say the right thing to the right people in the right way, if I just shorten it. And you talk about this new whole breed of content creators, if I may say, quote unquote. See, but my question is, are the processes really strong enough to support such content creation? Because right now we work with different level of people. I have a media planner, I even have a mobile planner, I have a digital analyst, then I have creative partners with whom we create content. But where does the ownership lies? As a traditional planner, I still struggle with the fact that I might have a great insight, but by the time it kind of goes down to the audience, I might have just lost the whole nuance of what I'm trying to say, or the whole idea of storytelling. So my question is the processes right now in the traditional advertising or even in digital advertising strong enough to kind of support the whole cause of content creation?
Gautam, you want to take that? Because we were just discussing when in doubt, acquire has been the strategy so far. How are you managing all that?
So there's two parts, right? I think that it's a work in progress. We are clearly, no one's there yet, right? But will we get there? Absolutely. And I think it's not just us as a company, but as an industry, it's a work in progress. I mean, that's the simplest way I could put it.
Sanjay, you want to respond to some part of that?
I think the point is that it's going to be different with different clients. You'll find a client who believes in what you're saying, or has faith in reaching out to people and making friends with them. In which case, the job will become easier. And I think you really, everybody talks about ROI. Your ROI is really good word of mouth because all of us are taking purchase decisions now based on advice from our friends. So if you can get lots of people to say good stuff about your product, that's really the ROI that you're looking for. And I think that's fairly measurable today. I mean, you have all kinds of softwares who are able to read into sentiment today. And to me, that's really what it is. And again, there will be tactical stuff like the Ford EcoSport launch that we did with Blue Hive, where we just engaged people across the country to create content. And the big job at that stage was, will they do the test drive? And I think that worked out very well. On the other hand, you'll have babycenter.com who's just advising mothers on everything that they need to know about kids, and the brand is, really, really very, very soft over there. But what they're doing is they're building a community of mothers for whom their products are important, and they're able to then reach out to them on an offline level. Once you build that community, then there are lots of ways to reach out to them and to market. So it's just about saying, do you want to stand by saying, I am the brand, I stand for this? How about just worrying about give the consumer first, and then you'll get back lots in return, but learn to give. I think that's something that everybody needs to figure out.
Just to answer that process-related stuff very specifically, I guess unless we are able to break down certain boundaries which are compartmentalized in terms of, there's a social planner, there's a digital planner, or whatever, social analyst, or whatever you want to call them, whatever terms. If it is going to be, the process is going to be compartmentalized, that it goes from A to B to C like a typical work chart, I think we are missing it entirely. The whole thing is, where we spoke about collaboration, I guess even the entire creative process, or the creation process, I will not call creative, will have to be structured in such a manner to be able to deliver on what I guess the question was trying to.
The problem there again, Peter, is that fundamentally a company like Google, even if it makes its money on advertising, in that setup the engineer is king. In a publishing setup, usually the content creator, in the case of say a newspaper, the journalist tends to be the guy calling the shots. Do you see people with these skill sets, for example, a hardcore techie or a journo willing to report into an agency type of a structure?
See, before I get there, the point is that the playbooks are being written. Technology is very dynamic. So we are actually working, with shifting sands. So what holds good today may not hold good tomorrow. And therefore, to the question of process, there can't be a defined process. It will have to be we'll have to keep kind of re-examining it and looking at that. So I think that's basically what I would say. Coming to your specific thing, I think mindsets are different, in my opinion. So somebody who's got a publishing mindset is not really going to thrive under somebody who's got the advertising kind of mindset. So in my view, it has to be, church and state. It can't be kind of combined. But is there a conflict? In my view, there's not. It's actually complementary. But each one has to leverage off the other skills. And I think ultimately, as we've all kind of said in one form or the other, it all depends ultimately on the impact on the consumer and how many products we're going to get through the door. I think that's basically right.
Yeah.
When we talk about ROI, everything depends on shareability and virality of the content. And since there is no mathematical formula for making anything viral or shareable, so client is always on the receiving end. How do you see that?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, Sanjay, please.
Yeah, I think the answer is about being continuously relevant. This word viral is a very abused, misused word. You can't just throw in a piece of content and expect it to get viral and say, hey, your cat attacked your dog and you shot that will get viral. But did Coca-Cola pay you money to keep the camera on all day long is a big question mark. So what we are really talking about is being relevant to a set of people. And again, we're talking about micro-targeting out here. Unlike the television world, which is really throwing bullets in all directions, here we're talking about being relevant to a set of people and creating content for them where they allow you into their lives. So I think virality is about sustained engagement rather than one video going viral. What do you mean to that set of people, and how relevant are you continuously relevant to them?
Yes, another question. Sir, we'll just give you the mic. Yeah, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, no, this is to the entire panel actually. This is to the entire panel actually. Do you think unbundling is the bane of communication problems that we are facing right now? The reason I ask this question is very critical because having been from a full service agency at one point in time, the brand responsibility was with the plan, with the agency which was there. The very fact that it is unbundling, like you rightly said that in the creation process, I would like to know how many specialists really are there at that point in time to hear the creation process, because the current structure of the agency does not permit that to happen. You have the creative directors who are possibly legends in their own, but digital has yet to see it, right? So obviously maybe that's one of the reasons why digital gets the least of the monies, which is called, we in digital call it remnant inventory, right? So we call it as remnant budgets or whatever it may be. Because even if digital is possibly driving the main media, suppose if there's a brief which comes across where digital is the core to achieving the targets and numbers, and you give them sort of a budget plan which is equivalent to that of mainstream media, I would love to see who has the guts to possibly say that, yes, let's do that and let's the other media follow. So I personally feel that even in content marketing actually, of course some of the speakers said that segmentation is dead. I wanted to have a conversation with him offline, but I think again, building up communities again is nothing but segmentation really. And to what really matters to them. For example, I am diabetic, right? Why would I read something to do with piles actually, right?
Yeah.
Right? I would rather read something to do with management of diabetics, right? And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the way it is. It is like, you know, a sprinkler sort of a strategy which is there in content, which you just say, okay, if you're lucky, you get what you want, or you have to possibly go into search again.
Yeah. Tim, you want to take that because he spoke about unbundling earlier, and you are a full-service agency, and you've got even a consulting arm, a training arm. You know, in this day and age of everybody being a creator, how do you manage the creative process in the traditional agency sense?
Well, the creative process, of course, is something extremely important, but it depends on what is the DNA of the agency. And I prefer to talk about what I'm a good experience, because last year we just bought Salt Mango Tree, which is a great advertising agency. And why this agency makes sense is that because people are artists. They are fantastic artists. Now, they are Malayali people, so it's great because they know what they are, the creativity is in their soul. But the thing is that now they need to be trained to learn how to produce for a client and to be able to answer to a brief so that to deliver what the client is expecting.
That's hard because they're all communists. Sorry.
Yes, exactly.
Jokes apart, but yeah.
Exactly. So I would say the thing is that people need to be artists, and it's very well known that in advertising agency, all creative are frustrated artists. So the objective is to make this artist happy about what they are doing, and make them understand as well that a non-sexy brand can be extremely interesting to work with.
I'm sorry, we've completely run out of time on this panel, but if you have any more questions, please feel free to take them offline with our panelists. Thanks for being a great audience, and thank you very much, panel members. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Much, and we'd like to thank you all with mementos, a token of affection, please. Mr. Singh will do the honors to our panelists and to the moderator.
Peter York from York Communications. Anthony from Global Team Ford. Sanjay of Optimistics, and Tim from the Links India.
And thank you, Abhimanyu, for once again moderating this session.